Okay, we'd like to welcome everybody to another edition of the Hood Independent Podcast, where we talk about various different topics here. We use the acronym of PRESS, P-R-E-E, two E's and two S's, and that stands for political, religious, economic, education, social events, and then special events. So today's letter is the second E in press, which is education. And I have with me here a friend of mine, Andre Ballard, and he's going to give us his background and perspective on what comes to mind to him when you're speaking in regards of education. Even before we came on, he made me aware that there's different types of education. I guess I was thinking more so in the public education uh, sphere. But in other words, I'm not going to limit him. I'm letting him share with us and give us his background on what it means when we talk about education. So, with that, without further ado, I'm turning it over to Mr. Andre Ballard.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And just before we came on, you were talking to me about, just asking me certain questions about education.
Yes.
And first of all, I appreciate you, inviting me to this. Education is a big deal. I'm an architect, and I have my own company, Ballard Architectural Studio. Is this a commercial? Okay. Maybe.
Okay. Shout out.
But the point is, I mentioned to Mike. I said I can't be an architect without a college education. Now there is a way to do it outside of going to college. It's long, drawn out. The shortest route in is a college education. We have either Bachelor of Architecture or Master of Architecture. And it has to be an accredited degree.
Okay.
And so the very nature of the profession says you got to go to college. And whether you want to or not depends on if you want to fulfill that dream or not. So in my case, I wanted to go regardless, and so I welcomed it. But
yes.
If you want to be an architect, you got to have a college education. Unless you go to the long route, which is like 12 or more years before you can take the test. And it's testing in this profession. So all different education requirements for different things that you want to do for a living. So I think, Mike, you asked me, and I appreciate it. I'm just going to start off. He said, when you think about education, what do you think? And I said, well, I think about education. I think about parenting.
Okay.
And parenting, how you put those two together. Well, the first educator in every child's life is mom and dad.
That's true.
Mom or dad, or mom and dad.
Yes.
Somebody's parenting. First thing you learn is the language, whatever language that is. In our case, it's English.
Learning starts at home.
It starts at home. You educate them. You teach them some part of your language, whether it's English. In our case, you teach them how to tie their shoe. You teach them how to go to the bathroom. You teach. I can go on and on and on. You teach them how to eat without choking. You teach them, things that they have to do to survive as a human being.
And those are things you usually don't even get taught at school.
No, you don't.
Okay. Okay.
And so mom and dad are the first educators in every child's life, or that child won't be able to thrive or survive, let alone thrive.
Yes.
And so that responsibility, I believe it's a God-given responsibility. I'm a godly person. I believe in God.
Same here.
And I believe it's a God-given responsibility to teach your children. It's your responsibility, not the system, not some educational system, not public, private, or any other kind of system. And I think the other question you asked me, like, what do you think of education? I said, well, first thing I think about systems.
Yes.
Educational systems. You got public, you got private, you got charter. These are different systems. You got homeschooling. You got Montessori. There's different ways of educating, different systems.
And that's interesting. And those are all examples of systems.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so what I found is we have 3 children, and we have a 4th one that's more like a spiritual child. He joined our family later on in his life. but all three of our children, we took on the responsibility of educating them.
Okay.
And we've and pretty much in this society, whatever educational system was out there, our kids experienced it.
Okay.
They had public education, private education. We homeschooled them. We had them do schooling online. I'm trying to think if there's some other ones that we had that's out there that we've done, and we did different forms of homeschooling, and so our children were prepared to move on in their life. Education is about preparation.
Yes.
And we were talking about luck earlier today. So, what's luck? Luck is preparation meets opportunity. And so if you...
Preparation meets opportunity.
And people say, well, that person's lucky. I said, if you mean preparation means opportunity, you're right. You're absolutely right.
All right.
And so, we prepared our children to be adults. I say all the time, I raised adults. I didn't raise children.
All right.
I brought, we brought them into this world, and we took on the responsibility to educate them. And what did that mean? Because my wife's a teacher. We watch a lot of TV, but we also did other things. We talked about our kids and how they're going to get to what God has called them to be.
Yes.
And the main thing is through education. So we taught them what it means to be a godly person, what it means to be a good person, what it means to be a sharing person. That's teaching. That's still education.
Yes.
And so all three of our kids, and I've had a school principal say to me, a high school principal, he said, "You know how to raise kids." I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I'm actually saying, here's an example. People look at us and say, "You don't know what to do with your kids." Well, that's not what happened with me and my wife. My wife's name is Sherry. We had 3 children, and all of them are very successful. All 3 of my kids are very successful. One's a physical therapist. One's a major in the Army and about to go up. He's going up. I can't keep up with his ranks.
Right.
But he ain't stopping. He's moving up. But one's a teacher. And I believe that and this is not popular what I'm about to say, but I believe it's the responsibility of parents to be home when their kids get home.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I read something. I homeschooled our kids early when it was time for my daughter to go into kindergarten, and I had introduced my wife to this idea of homeschooling. So it was another architect had started his company, and he said, "Andrea, we homeschooling our kids." I said, "What is that?" So another black architect, and I said, "What is that?" And he explained it to me. He said, "Hey, we're having a meeting. Why don't you come to us?" So I took my wife. My wife's a teacher, a licensed certified teacher.
Okay.
And she looked at me like, "I ain't thinking about that. I want these kids out of my hair." Until our daughter, a middle child, she was like, it's time to go to kindergarten. She was like, "Can't do it. I can't throw her to the wolves." So the morning she was supposed to go, she decided we're gonna homeschool this child.
All right. Yes.
So Amber, our middle daughter, was the first one we homeschooled, and the younger son, he was just a year younger. It wasn't time for him even to go.
Okay.
And so we did that, and Sherry was, is a teacher, so it was an easy transition for her. And so and that's her favorite thing to do. Their favorite thing is the homeschooling, my wife's.
Okay.
And so the thing is that I didn't expect was backlash. The public school, we got public school backlash. We got backlash from people at church. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I think I'm educating my kids. That's what I'm trying to do." And so, well, and even our parents were like, "Well, public education was good enough for us." I'm like, okay. And first of all, not everybody gets public education. You get private education. So I started to defend myself. But we went on and we moved into educating our kids that way, and then we did private education. And our middle son, our oldest son, we put him in a private Christian school.
Okay.
And actually it didn't fit him. We brought him home.
Okay.
But I read something along the way that changed the direction of our family. I went to a homeschool convention in Columbus, Ohio, and there was this magazine article they had that I read while I was sitting there waiting. And we're looking at different curriculum. We got this big hall full of curriculum, and homeschooling's a big business now. It's like
yes, it is.
So, but this article said, and it really changed our direction of our family. it was called When Daddy Comes Home. So it always talks about bring the mom home, and let so the kids could come home to a parent. In this case, this article was talking about bring the parent that you bring home is the dad. I read that and I was like, that's an amazing thought.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So I have what I do for a living is easily done at home. I'm an architect. I can work out of my house. A lot of home businesses start off. A lot of professional businesses start off in their home.
Yes.
Engineers, architects, lawyers, doctors, dentists. They literally start off in their home. What we call I call it the original professionals.
Okay.
Forgive me if I'm not trying to put anybody down when I say that, but I was like, but that is easy for me to bring myself home. So I took that and talked to my wife about it, and she's a school teacher, and we're like, yeah, let's do that. I'll do work. You do business at home. So when the kids at that time were doing public school, came home, they came home to dad, which to a child is probably not the person you want to come home to.
Right.
Because dad is not. And in my case, with my kids, they're like, Dad, I don't take no stuff. And it was true. I wasn't just trying not to take stuff. It was just the nature of.
It's the way it was.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
And so they came home, and so there wasn't no nonsense going on, you got homework, let's do your homework. And so, and I think the very nature of a man's voice kind of makes children want to at least listen a little bit more than they did, with mom. So my kids no different.
Okay. Well, let me do this. Just take you a little different direction. So tell me more about your education.
Sure.
You originally from?
I grew up in Toledo area. I was born in Detroit and spent my early elementary years in Detroit till I was 7. Then at 7 we moved to Toledo as a result of the riot in 1967.
Yes.
And so we moved to Toledo, moved over by Scott High School around the corner from it, and next door.
Right, 67. You're talking about in Detroit.
Yes.
Okay.
It actually drove us here.
Yes.
I didn't, it wasn't a big deal to us. Me, when I say us, my 3 kids, my mom was terrified, I think. But she was like, I got to get y'all out of here. So
safer place.
Yeah, so she did. She brought us to Toledo, which is just an hour away. And we moved in with grandma, and auntie lived across the street. And so eventually we moved next door. So the 3, with our family, like a triangle thing going. I could go eat food anywhere as a kid. It was great.
Right.
And so we went up. My elementary school was right up the street. And what's one thing I like about some of this, like the public education, just literally it was up the street, so I could walk to my elementary school.
Yeah, same with me. Yeah.
And that was a blessing. That also meant if I got in trouble, the principal could come home to me, to my parents really quickly.
Absolutely.
So I was, they didn't have to worry about me doing anything ridiculous. But I eventually did high school at Scott, graduated from Scott, and went on to college at a historic black college called Hampton University. At the time it was Hampton Institute.
Yes. And
they had an accredited program, a Bachelor of Architecture, that I did. It was a 5-year degree. And actually later on I went and got my Master's of Architecture just in 1 year. Above the bachelor's, so I could teach architecture, and that was crucial. I knew I've always wanted to teach that in this profession, and I also wanted my own business. So the guy that when I was a senior graduating from Hampton, there was this guy. He was an architect he taught in Arkansas. I forgot the name of it. I think it was the University of Arkansas, but I'm not positive. And he had his own firm.
Okay.
And so I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do both.
Okay.
And so I knew I couldn't do it without a master's. And so I went and got my master's so that I could teach. So I teach part-time. Up until COVID, I was teaching part-time at Bowling Green State University Architecture. As I ran my own business, I was doing exactly what this guy had done. Except he taught full-time and had his business part-time. I did the reverse.
You did the opposite.
Yeah, and I'm glad I'm able to bring to the students real life architecture, what it is, what it means to run a business, what it is, what this, what you're learning is not just theory. And in my class, it was the real deal. And most of them appreciated, and other ones didn't. so the education I got was from, my master's from Miami University, which is a predominantly white institution. They call them PWIs. And so I'm glad I did it in reverse. I went to the historic black college first.
Yes.
And I got
Prepared you.
Yes, it encouraged me. It was nurturing.
Yes.
I mean, I was just saying, at a historic black college, for the most part, you have to worry. You don't have to worry about, and I know there's an exception in what I'm about to say. If somebody's criticizing you or saying something about you, it's probably true. It's not a racial thing. They say you're a jerk, you're actually a jerk.
Okay. All right.
But and I'm trying to be humorous when I say that, but you don't have to really worry about.
Yeah.
Is this racist? No, it's probably your character.
Right. Right.
And so, but I learned what it meant to be an architect. In that setting where I had black architects around me. So when I returned, there was only one black architect when I had to return from college. He passed on, and then another one came. He was a bit old. He was older than me, but I hadn't met him until I had started my own firm. Now I'm the only black architect in the Toledo area.
Okay.
And I try to mentor as much as possible. Mentoring is a big deal. But what I find is another part about education most people don't think about. I learn more by teaching than I do by trying to learn.
Wow. Okay.
So they say you retain 95% of what you teach than you do sitting in somebody's classroom, learning it. I mean, you really find out what you know by trying to tell somebody what it is.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. That makes perfectly good sense. So how do you see the role or the impact of the education that you have prepared your children from? How do you see that playing out in their adult lives today?
So all our kids, they had the varied of education. And me and my wife say is we're not married to or embracing our educational system.
Yes.
We're married to and embracing educating our kids.
Okay.
And that was the number one goal.
Yes.
At one point we couldn't afford a curriculum. And so we were like, because I had started my business. And the curriculum cost some money, so it's like, okay, I know what we're gonna do. We'll go to the library. It would tell us all these books. I mean, the library and books go together.
Yes.
And we use the books in the library as the curriculum for our children. And so we went and we taught them what was in the book. Both of us, basically, my wife's a teacher, so, we knew how to put together a lesson plan and things like that.
Yes.
But we didn't have the benefit of the money to buy the curriculum. So we made our own curriculum. And what it takes is in the state of Ohio is that a licensed teacher has to sign off on whatever your child did that year. So
okay. Now here's another thing I thought about too, because times when we were coming up and being educated, or even educating our kids, is different from the way it is now. You have changing demographics, and as you stated, that all of your children were educated in the house with you and their mothers.
And that was part of it. Actually, they've done everything.
Yes.
Private school, public school.
Yes.
Homeschooling, online school.
Yeah, so you pretty much prepared them for just about every scenario they could encounter. But now in these days, in changing demographics, that we know a lot of the households now are headed by single parents. And it's not all women. When you usually say that, people think women, but you got a lot of men raising their children also. So they face some different situations, some different challenges. So what insight or advice would you offer to in that situation? Because you had mentioned earlier on, you were talking about the parents being involved and actually being responsible in the beginning stages for the kids' education, from right down to learning how to feed yourself and clothe yourself. And those are life educating lessons.
Life skills.
Lessons.
Absolutely.
So what advice would you have to offer present day for people in educating their children?
The situation of a parent is a single parent, whether it's a male or female. Your beginning problem is that parenting was always meant to be a two-person.
It's a team approach.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was meant to be a male and a female line. Mm-hmm. It was meant to be two people. Mm-hmm. And because you actually get one thing from the male that you differently from the female, and it's absolutely necessary.
Yes.
For the
for
proper
a
growth,
well-rounded
person.
Absolutely.
And so, first thing I would say, if you're single, you're already behind the eight ball. Mm-hmm. And so, first thing was like, how can I get help? Mm-hmm. You need help.
You need help.
Doing this by yourself.
Yeah, it's still a team approach.
Yes, it's still a team approach. So maybe you bring a relative into the process.
Okay.
Or somebody at your church, but you find someone who will partner with you in helping to educate your child. And a lot of people say, well, that's the public school or the charter school or private school. I said, I'm talking about outside of that.
Right.
That's also your partner.
Yes.
But the responsibility is parents, and somebody will help you take on the responsibility.
Yes.
And not put it on a system, because they my wife said, well, with my wife being a teacher, she tells me that one of her biggest problems is, as a teacher, is I can't control what goes on at home, and they spend more time there than they do with me.
Absolutely.
And so, a lot of times the parent, the teachers are they're what's the word I'm looking for? Blame for what happens with these child. Really, it's not their
Absolutely.
They do have a responsibility, but they don't have the overall responsibility.
Yes. And even nowadays, they seem to have more responsibility or expectation. I wouldn't say responsibility.
Right, more expectation.
Than
I agree.
they used to have then, because now they're saying teachers have to be social workers and safety officers.
More than they signed up for, that's for
everything
sure.
else. Yeah, all they really signed up for was to teach your kids
right. A certain
topic
Yeah.
instead of trying to get them to stay in their seats and be quiet and stop being disruptive and all those things. So yeah, they're facing a lot of different challenges that's really is not their first line of responsibility. And even as you said, again, if those things are being taught at home, then you have more than likely you'll have a much more disciplined child that comes into your classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
and being an architect, I also have an advantage because education happens inside most of the time, in a building most of the time. In our case, it was a home, but it was also other buildings. It could be a church, it could be a school. One of the disadvantages our kids have in public schools is that most of the time these are very large classrooms with a lot of kids.
Okay.
And the student-teacher ratio is too high. The higher the number of students to one teacher, kind of the disadvantage that group has.
Absolutely.
And so I'm starting to see a trend toward smaller planning where your student-teacher ratio is reduced quite a bit.
Absolutely.
And the classroom, and there's a book that, and actually we are leading some workshops with some clients that are doing a private school. We're actually designing small learning centers is what we call them, and small learning communities is part of the design, where it's found that the kids will learn better.
Absolutely.
When there's more
settings.
personal
contact.
And it's not lecture. Architects aren't really, they're taught through the lecture method, but most of the time we're taught through what we call studios.
Okay.
And it's not somebody in front of a board. It's really more self-taught.
And let me ask you this question too. Something I've listened to recently and found it quite interesting. There was a time, I think, again, during the era when we were coming up, that America was leading the world when it comes to education. It was at the top of the system. And now there's been a dramatic decline in where we stand in relationship to other countries in the world.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to? Do you have any thoughts, any insight on how that has happened?
I can't speak to the overall environment or societal um, setup.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much. I have my opinions on some of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, and this is personal because
Mm-hmm.
my wife is a teacher.
Yes,
There's not a they're not paid enough for what they do,
I believe that. I
and
believe
it's
that.
hard to get more people in education.
Mm-hmm.
And so in other places
Quality
like
people.
Finland,
Mm-hmm.
they actually pay their teachers what they're worth,
Okay.
or at least closer to what they're worth.
Okay.
And education is actually something that's valued. It doesn't seem that we value education enough.
Absolutely. So would that be considered like merit pay? Would that be the
I don't
same
know.
thing?
I'm not sure.
Based on your qualifications and how you're able to
Mm.
connect and connect with the children and motivate them?
Um, I think merit pay in our society is
Yes.
based on your scores,
Mhm.
and but I'm not completely
Yeah, I know it's kind of a vague
understood about that.
terminology
Yeah,
to
yeah.
me also.
I I I think we've made our schools, more babysitters
Yes.
than what they're supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and which is a partner,
Mm-hmm.
with the parents of their educating their children
Yes.
versus babysitting. Just get them out my hair. And I'm not saying that because parents are bad people. I'm saying that because the way our society is set up in terms of work
Mm-hmm.
and how many hours we work in this world, we work. The Americans work a lot
Mm-hmm.
more compared to other cultures,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, caregiving is given to somebody. There will be I read a book on the real wealth of nations,
Mm-hmm.
and it was this attorney, female attorney, who wrote this book, and she says without caregiving there could be no business, no gross national product,
Mm-hmm.
because somebody's watching the child, somebody's watching the elderly, somebody is caregiving so that people can go out
Mm-hmm.
and
That makes sense.
and
Mm-hmm.
bring in
Mm-hmm.
bring in revenue to their families and
Yes.
other situations. That caregiving is everything,
Mm-hmm.
and not enough is given. It was crazy when as I was reading the book, she was like for instance, if there's a homemaker who's home with the kids,
Mm-hmm.
he said on the open market. And this is what the book said, I told my wife this, and she, who actually worked a job, but when I told her this, she was like, "Yeah, I think she's right." You be making like $137,000 a year for what you do on the open market
Yeah.
as a homemaker.
Yeah.
You would be paid
Yeah,
that.
I've seen something like that too. Yeah, a survey done on that as well. You're absolutely
And
right.
so I think one of our biggest challenges is that you know we just don't think through stuff enough.
Mm-hmm.
We don't use a lot of wisdom. We let stuff happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
As I said in the beginning, we raised adults. We didn't raise children.
Mm-hmm.
That was intentional. We intentionally raised our kids a certain way, and we were, and we were able to measure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think if you're intentional about something, you have goals. If you don't have a measurement, that's
Yeah.
part of your goal setting is messed up.
Absolutely.
And so we had a measurement. In our case, it were the grades, and I remember sitting down with my kids. One of the things we did in our family, which is part of the education process,
Mm-hmm.
we ate together every night.
Mm-hmm.
We had a family table.
That's important. And I remember being, like I said, it was that way in the era, pretty much raised in the same era.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing happening. You expected to be at the table at a certain time.
Yes.
Unless something really was going on that caused you
Not to
be
be
away.
Yeah,
But I also
just this one thing on this family table, but it has to do with education. Give me 2 seconds. I remember telling the kids at one of our family table, just our regular meals at a family table, I said, I don't have the money to get you through college. I can't pay for your college.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to get good grades. All of it. A will get you a certain amount. A B will get you a certain amount. A C ain't gonna get you nothing. A
Right.
D, you can forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said to him, plan on getting scholarships because you're going to be a good student. And every one of my kids did that.
Now, this is something else that I went through high school with, and I never really understood it until I got to college. And I explained it to my son and his friends as they were coming through the high school public education system. The thing called critical thinking. And they didn't know what I was talking about, and it's not really taught very much in the public school system,
Definitely.
which I think is one of the takeaways and another factor that causes us to fall below other countries educationally. Because critical thinking, from the idea in college, I think it
That's
changed
what you
the
hear
name a
most of
couple
the time,
times. Yeah. And that's where I was introduced to it. And in college, it was called situational management or other different terms they came up with. It is, but critical thinking, as I explained it to my son, was simply we're going to ask you a question or give you a certain, put you in a certain situation, and you have to figure it out. So in other words, there was no yes and no answer.
Okay.
There was no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
There was no choice, no multiple choice. You circle A, B, C, B, D, or E for all of the above. None of that. They put you in a situation to say, similar to this, you have a company and you've got 20 employees. All your employees are vital to the operation of this company, but you have this department head that comes to you and say, you need to cut your budget or your labor or your staff by 10%. And they tell you that and they walk away. They don't tell you how to do it. They just tell you got to do it. You have to do it. So you have to figure it out. You know, what can you do with, what can you do without. As I said, there's no roadmap, or there's no right or wrong answers. You got to figure it out, and hoping that you're making the right approach to whatever it is you're doing. And that's critical thinking. It doesn't give you all the answers. They put you in situations that you have to learn to think and use your own mind and use your own intellect and try different things. If you try one thing and it don't work, okay, that didn't work. Let me try something else. And I think our kids are missing that now.
I agree.
Not only in high school now, as I'm sure you're aware too, as I was joking with him earlier, but I really meant it when I told him I was envious of his college education because I always wanted HBCU experience also, and I didn't get a chance to have that. But we were taught that college was a place that you go for a free exchange of ideas. You know, you share your thoughts and information, your experiences, your background. I'll share mine. Another individual share theirs, and in that we may be able to come out of it with some parts of everybody to maybe come to a different idea or different concept. Now we know also that I believe it was Berkeley, California, where that first started at, when they were riding over free speech and being able to speak. And now we're in reverse. Now you can't sit in the college nowadays and share your thoughts or your opinion. You have what people call cancel culture, or people wanting to shut you down or protest or picket against you because they don't like what it is that you're saying. But what do you think about that, about the college experience or someone coming out of high school?
One of the things that, and I'm glad I got the education I did because of the profession I'm in.
Yes.
Critical thinking is how we design. It's for instance, a lot of people have trouble with word problems. So they because a word problem there's a way of doing a word problem.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with those.
It's a problem solving process.
Yes.
And so the nature of design is to solve problems. And so you have to set up the problem first. You have to put everything in an organized fashion, and then get ready to solve the problem. But if you don't do the setting up properly, you'll never get the answer.
Right, you're never gonna get it. You're absolutely right. You're right.
And so critical thinking is that process of setting it up, thinking through all the parameters, all the characteristics, all the criteria, put them all together in an organized fashion, and then being able to look at it and come up with solutions based on what the things that you're seeing. And so the very nature of design is that you got all these different parameters and characteristics that are coming at you. I mean, thousands of them. at the same time. And so you know, how do you? It's like eating an elephant, one piece at a time. So you put it all together in a very organized fashion, and you look at this idea, this thing, how does it affect this? And you have to do it simultaneously. You have to actually think about it at the same time. So that's what they teach in the architectural school, is how to do that design. They call it design thinking, or in another word for critical thinking. The other thing that they introduced that I didn't get in high school or even before that was team approach.
Team approach.
I did it with a group.
Okay, explain what that is.
You know, most of your homework is done by yourself. And there are high schools and other places where you have a team project, usually but one person though. So we would have, we had team projects with several, 4 or 5 people all at once.
Like a group.
Yeah, a group. And so you find out real quick that you're inadequate.
Yes.
In a team approach. So you have to learn how to do a team approach.
Absolutely.
And usually the person that's a natural leader leads the team, but that's necessarily, that is sometimes a road to disaster.
Yeah.
They might not know how to talk, but they might not know how to lead.
Okay.
And so the critical thinking and team approach together, I think that was offered in college, wasn't offered in high school.
Gotcha. Exactly. And then you're right. It's taken out if it was ever introduced in high school, because I never heard of critical thinking when I was in high school.
Until I got to college.
Till I got to college, and that's when I started realizing that. So I, again, like I said, I taught that to my son and his best friend at the time. The same thing. You got to be able to learn to think for yourself. In fact, I was at a elementary school in a certain neighborhood, and I was driving by and I saw a sign. And I read it, and I stopped and took a picture of it, because it says, "Critical thinkers are not followers." They figure stuff their own way. If they can see a group going a certain way and using their own mind and their own thinking, it's like, is that good for me? Is that best for me? I don't think I need to do that. I'm going this way, instead of just following the crowd, being a follower, being a copycat. Those people will lead you down a path of destruction.
That's true.
And and I remember when we was at kids, when got in trouble, come home, had to be disciplined by your parents, and you tell them, well, Johnny was doing this and Johnny was doing that, and they say, well, if Johnny jump off a cliff,
Yes, I heard that before.
Yeah, I look at Johnny go off that cliff, I was like,
Bye-bye.
I don't think I want to do that. No. Bye, Johnny.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Critical thinking, being able to think for yourself.
And I wish they had taught it more in high school.
Yeah, I really wish they would have too. Yeah, we were.
And I think, I don't know. I mean, I guess what I've learned is in the profession that I'm in, that you have so much to learn that you got to do some of this stuff step by step.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if we were too immature for critical thinking. I'm not sure. But I think in other places they have learned, like I think I mentioned Finland. That they actually teach it earlier than college.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad that you said that, because that leads me to my next point and my next question, or maybe even my last question, and that is challenging kids at a younger age. I've heard and experienced myself people when they used to have like career days, and they ask kids, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? Some say, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a firefighter, or whatever. And then as they continue to grow and they're asked that question again, and say something like, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an architect, I want to be a doctor. And they say, well, no, with your background, I don't think that's good for you. Why don't you just become a service worker or something like that? So you're killing people's dreams and their desires instead of that you're lowering the bar when you ought to be raising the bar. And if they don't reach all the bar, at least they're at a higher level than they would have been if you didn't push them, if you didn't challenge them.
That's right, I agree.
And that's the last thing that I was going to ask you. So for kids or for people, for anyone actually, because eventually people don't believe this, but I've seen it. They said, so goes African Americans, so goes the nation. It may not be affecting you right away, but eventually you'll see that. For example, with the single mothers or the single families. You know, you would see that predominantly in the beginning in African American families, but over the last 10 to 20 years, you're seeing just as many white single mothers and everything. So they're following the same
That's true.
trap that
That's
everyone
true.
else is. And so it's in our best interest to try to educate everyone,
That's
you know,
right.
and to challenge everyone to be the better version of themselves.
I agree.
And again, I think that would go a long ways as far as people feeling adequate in what they were doing. You was talking about coming to the group, because I remember being in college, being in a group setting too, and say, oh, and my thing is, okay, what is my strength and what am I bringing to the group?
Table, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
everybody
it.
is supposed to be bringing somebody. Nobody gets to sit back and check out.
That's right.
You know,
That's
you
right.
got to play a part
That's right.
in that. And so, as we're concluding, Andre, what would you say to young people, any young person that feels as if, because we're dealing with a generation that's that way now. I'll give you this one last thing and I'll ask the question. They was talking about a professor just recently that got fired from a university. I forget what the name of the university was, because he was teaching, I forget what the course was, but the students went to the president and started protesting, saying this guy's class was too hard. It was some type of engineering, but the class was too hard. They couldn't do the work. And so instead of allowing themselves to be challenged, they started picketing and protesting because they couldn't do the work. And they literally got this professor fired.
Oh, that's awful.
And so my thing is, how do we, or where do you think a good place to start is challenging young people and telling them, you know, not to be afraid to be challenged. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I teach at the college level, and I could see. I mean, students are intimidated by, you know, what they don't know.
Things they don't
front.
know. Absolutely.
It's kind of home training. Something you can't teach once you get them in school. You can't teach discipline. You can't teach. Not. I mean, you could, but the curriculum is too. You know, will be much longer than it is.
Yeah, but the expectation
Yeah.
is they're supposed to come
Right.
with that.
They're supposed to come with the discipline.
Which is what you were saying. Parents is the first teacher.
Yes, right. The first
Teach your kids at home. Get in
Yes.
class, sit
Yes.
down. Don't be acting up. Those type of things.
But my students, when I teach, you know, and I've taught in at the university level, I taught in community college. I always give people a chance, and I say, if you flunk out my class, it's because you didn't do the work.
Right.
I mean, you ain't gonna get a grade if you ain't gonna do the work. You gonna get a grade, but you gonna like it.
Right.
And so it's like, you know, I will give you a chance to the last day of class to do the work, but I'm not going to do it for you. And I bend over backwards. My students know when they get a bad grade or get a grade that they don't, you know, it's a lower grade, I should say, that they deserve a lower grade because I give them every chance. And I've had a student who was graduating, and he said to me, this is recent, I gave him an I, incomplete. And I said, I'm giving you incomplete because I know you can do this for whatever reason. Oh, no, here's the reason. He told me the reason. He ended up having some challenges. I said, I know that you could pass, so I'm going to give you a chance to make it up. And he didn't. He didn't make it up. I said, okay. I said, and he sent me an email and he apologized. He said, I can tell you it wasn't your fault that I didn't get to this grade. He said, if you would give me one more chance. He was telling the truth. He wasn't just messing around. He said, this is my fault.
All right.
If you would give me one more chance to make this up, I will do so. And I emailed him back. I said, I will give you that chance, and here's the time I'm giving you to do it. And so I said, because this needs to be fair to everybody. And so he did. He did it. He did the work. I said, that's all I ever asked. That's all I want.
That's all I wanted.
Was you to do the work. And I'm a better teacher because I'm a better father. Because I'm a father. You know, I know about young folks. I know what it takes for them to learn something because I've taught my children. I've been a father longer than I've been anything, at least in my life. And so just like I would teach my children, if I'm gonna teach my child how to cut the grass,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I have a vested interest in you learn how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to make sure, I'm going to measure it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a pass and there is a fail. People talk about you don't give them grades. I'm like, I don't know where that's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is a way of doing things, and there's success and there's failure.
Right.
And it's not about self-esteem when you do that. And so if somebody fails, sometimes that's a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, okay,
Now
give them another chance.
Now they're paying attention.
Now they're paying attention. And there's a reason why they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So you help them assess that.
Absolutely. And you're also giving them a realistic perspective, because life is also success and fail. Mm-hmm. And like I said, once you leave the school system and go out in life, there's not going to be anyone there holding your hand.
No.
Either you do it or you don't do it. You either succeed or you don't succeed. And so there's one last thing to this that I'd like to ask you about. I know what I think about it, but I want to hear what you have to say about it. How do you feel with special education being taught in the school system?
Public in particular.
Public in particular.
I think I think it's a good thing. My wife is actually a special ed teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in any system, I think special ed is necessary in order to help those who have more challenges than normal. They might have a physical or mental challenge that is in their way, is a hurdle they have to get over in order to do things where most people normally don't have those hurdles.
Okay.
And so, I watch my wife. We were college sweethearts, so I've seen her from the beginning, and she's seen me from the beginning of our individual careers. And I watch her. She's a sweetheart. I mean, you have to have a special type of heart to be able to deal with the challenges that these certain students have, and she has that.
Yes.
And I think I think special ed is important and necessary, because it tries at least even the playing field for people who have challenges. It tries to get them to a certain standard that everyone else is at, and it also it goes in reverse. Through my wife, we got certain students who were having challenges that when I encountered them outside a normal environment, in a normal environment, she actually taught me how to deal with, like, for instance, some students, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone, or have not Asperger's, but autism.
Yes.
And I've had to deal with severe autism with certain young folks in our life, and I was somewhat intimidated because their speech was hard to understand. It was, I didn't want to offend them or offend anybody in this situation, but
yes,
and Sherry just, she was able to teach me how to communicate with somebody who has trouble communicating.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's not just them, it's us.
Yeah. Oh, right. That's good. That's definitely a different perspective. So in wrapping up here, is there any final thoughts you want to share as we wrapping up here today?
Yeah, I one of the things I feel about education, I did this for my kids and other people. I do it daily if I have a good conversation, or long conversations with people. And I basically it's like, what do you dream about?
Yeah.
What is important to you? What turns you on? What makes you excited? What inspires you?
And we all ought to have something like that.
That's normal. That's what and the things that inspire you is really kind of what you're called to.
Absolutely.
And so I would say to somebody, if you could get paid for doing anything, what would that anything be?
Okay.
I mean, let's take money out of the picture.
I understand where you're going, though.
Take money out of the picture. Say, well, would I get paid what I want to get? Yeah, you get paid anything you want to. You just got to do something.
Right.
What would that something be? If you can get paid for anything.
Absolutely.
And so I said that answer is what inspires you.
Yeah.
It is what you're called to.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was, it came early. I was 12 years old when I decided to be an architect. And so for me, everything, I eat, sleep, and drink this stuff.
Yes.
Because it makes me happy. It makes me joyful.
Yes.
And so it's not a work for me. It's joy for me.
Absolutely.
And my wife was like, could you have a little less joy in your life? You need. She said, I need you to do something other than architecture. And so,
right.
So that, but I did that with my kids. I'm like, so you're gonna, I said, especially my boys. I said, you're gonna work the rest of your life. So you need to be happy with what you're gonna be able to do.
Yeah.
What gives you joy?
Absolutely.
And I find it, I hope that they have found that. They're in their 30s and they're still finding it.
Okay, that's good.
But they know what the roadmap is, and it's the roadmap is inside of their heart.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Well, thank you. We thank you for coming on today and sharing with us about education. Thank everyone for listening in. And again, this is the Hood Independent Podcast, and we thank you all for listening in. And we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah.